Hi, everyone, and believe it or not, it is week 4 this week. And so it's time for us to move on to our next lecture. Just a couple of announcements beforehand. I'm behind in grading again. Sorry. I'm going to try and focus tomorrow on grading. And if it's any consolation, this is not the only class I'm behind on. So, additionally, though, I've had a lot of really great questions as far as when are things due because this is sort of an asynchronous class, and I want this to be as useful to you as possible. And so, um, do not leave everything until the end. Do the assignments when they're useful to you. Okay, and as long as you get them turned in before the semester's over, I am happy. But please don't leave everything till the end because remember, the whole purpose of this class is to help you improve your score in a particular class. Okay, so each of these assignments is designed to be helpful to you, and you're not going to get anything out of this if you wait until the end. So I think that's everything. It's time for us to discuss test taking strategies. And so before we do that, though, I want to talk about partially how to read a book and turn it. We've talked before about making reading more of an active than passive exercise. And so the next slide, we're going to have a few more hints on that. Okay, so before we get into test taking strategies, I just do want to have a quick review on reading a book and remember to make it from passive to an active activity. So these are things that I've learned over the years. Okay, first off, check the figures and tables. Okay, because this is part of what starts to switch things into an active activity because you kind of get an idea of what to expect. Okay, and remember that if you happen to see a figure, don't panic. Check out your X and Y axes and all sorts of other good stuff. And if it's tables, read the legends and make sure you know what you're looking at. But the idea is this will help you once you come across it again in the text. Okay. Secondly, now this is one of the most important pieces of information I can give you, is to decide on a time limit. So when I was in grad school, I was super swamped. Always felt behind. I never felt like I was going to get everything done. And I was basically a nervous wreck for the first year. And what I learned is that I had to be really efficient with my time. And in order to do that, I actually had to set a time limit. Okay. So I would say, all right, I'm going to get up at 7, and then from 8 to 10, I'm going to read about this. From 10 to 2, I'm going to read these papers. Okay. And so when you decide on a time limit and you stick to it, that's the key. Make sure you stick to it. It forces you to be efficient because you're like, oh, I only have 2 hours to do this. I better hustle. Okay. So that actually really helped me out when I was in school and definitely made a big difference on how to balance everything. Okay, don't forget to make things active. So take notes, ask questions, think about things you want to know as you're reading your textbooks, finding the textbooks. Hint, hint. Don't forget also, just because you read it once, that doesn't mean you've really got it. Okay, usually they say read something 3 times. The first time your brain's trying to understand it, the second time, it starts to really sink in, and by the third time, that's when it really sinks in. Okay, think about where you need to focus. Okay, and so what is giving you the most trouble? That's where you need to spend the majority of your time. Okay, don't forget to do an overview, reread your notes, take details down because a lot of times in science, this is what throws people. Okay, and so marking things up. I know we all want to turn our textbooks back in, and believe me, I get it, they're super expensive. But realistically speaking, when you mark them up, it helps you remember things. And when I'm reading a scientific paper, I take notes all over that thing. Okay. Citation managers, once you start reading a lot of papers for your career, these are really useful. They used to be RefWorks, I think, and now there's all sorts of different ones. Mendeley is a free one if you guys are cheap like me, which I'm very cheap, as my daughter will agree to. So will my husband, actually. But anyway, so the free ones can definitely be a good thing. Another suggestion, don't underestimate the power of walking away from something and letting your unconscious think about it. Now, I'm not talking about playing something in your sleep, okay, or anything along those lines like they used to try. I'm talking about when something's really giving you a struggle, walk away from it for a while. Go for a jog, go work out, go think about something else. A lot of times your brain is working on things when you don't even realize it. And then all of a sudden you'll have this great, aha, that's the what I was not doing moment, okay, when things will actually start to click. So sometimes walking away from things can be a really huge help. And then last but not least, just like every other skill that we learn, how reading a book effectively is a really big deal, and it takes some rehearsal. So keep practicing, and then eventually you get quicker. So if right away, if it's taking a long time, Don't get discouraged. Just realize that this takes practice, and ultimately you'll get a lot quicker with it, and it will be second nature to you before you know it. So let's talk about those exams now, shall we? So many of you have had your first round of exams. That's why you're in this class. Some of you are still waiting for your exams. And so the reason we sort of timed this class when we did is I kind of want you to have your first exam to see how it goes, because almost always there's room for improvement. Okay, even if you get like a decent score on something, many times you're just like, okay, this wasn't horrible, but I really need to improve. And so what we're going to focus on today is some strategies that you can actually use for taking exams in different STEM fields in particular. And then we'll try and branch out a little bit later. So what I'd like you to think about now is what type of strategies you already use during an exam, okay? And then the thing I want you to think about is, are your strategies actually working for you or not? And this is something that you really need to be honest with yourself about. So remember we talked about before that metacognition is thinking about how you think. Well, now you need to think about how you take an exam. Okay. Now, if you're just panicking, which by the way happens to a lot of people, it's totally normal. But we need to sort of work to get through that. And so the better you know the material and the better you approach a test with a strategy, the less likely you are to panic. So don't panic, okay? Step number one, breathe. It's going to be fine, okay? What I want you to do is to take a minute, and then I want you to think about, okay, so what strategies do work for me? What strategies don't work for me? Okay, and definitely do that before you hit the next slide when we start talking about test taking strategies. So pause here for a minute and make a list of things that you do when you take an exam. And then I want, next to that list, I want you to write what does and doesn't work for you, and be honest, okay? The whole purpose of this class is to improve. And if you're not honest with yourself, it's never going to happen. So what am I doing? What's working for me? What's not working for me? Pause for a moment and make a list of at least 3 to 5 things that you can think of now that may or may not work for you. Okay, so let's talk about some strategies that you can do that have shown to be effective based on the scientific data. Before you start an exam, okay, so my suggestion to you is to preview the test before you answer anything. This starts to get you thinking about the material. Also, pay attention to how many points each thing is worth, okay? So realistically speaking, in most classes, in most tests and in most classes, we need to budget our time because, as we said, time can be very limited. So you obviously want to spend your time where more of the points are and worry less about where fewer of the points are. Okay? Then what you want to do is quickly calculate how much time you should allow for each section. Okay? And again, according to the point value. So do not spend 30 minutes on an essay question. It's only worth 5 points. It's not worth it. Okay? You want to go and spend most of your time where the points are. Now, the next thing is something that I loved once I actually discovered it, but man, it took me forever, and it's called a mind dump. Okay, so make notes of anything from the preview that you think you might need. Okay, write down things that are used in learning the material, so any acronyms or anything along those lines. Okay, and so then also you can sort of outline your answers to those discussion questions, and that way you can organize your thoughts, make sure you're putting everything in there. Do not be overly compulsive about this, okay? And if you find that you are, and it's actually an issue for you, there are situations where many students have things like OCD or that type of thing. And the reason I can speak about this is because my daughter has it, okay? And my husband has it a little bit. And it's not something that's fun. But if it gets to that situation where you just can't move on, or you notice that there's an issue, go talk to the SSD services, because they can definitely help you. And don't be ashamed of it. So many people, we all have our little quirks and challenges these days. We want you to improve and we want you to do well. Okay, so but definitely do a mind dump if you can. And so then think about where you're going to spend most of your time. And that should all be based on the points, because remember, you want to use strategy. Strategy is key in everything. Okay, so let's talk about how to prepare for math and science exams, because obviously this makes the difference when it comes to taking the exam. Okay, so now I have had students look at me like I'm completely insane when I make this first suggestion, but I can't tell you how well it works. Okay, translate a problem that's giving you fits and put it into English. So what you're doing is you're putting a problem into words, and that is going to boost your understanding. Then, you study the equations and the formulas, you're just going to put those into words too. And what happens is you start to see how each of these formulas can be applied. Okay, so it's forcing one side of your brain to shove something to the other side, and that's definitely key when it comes time to, really understanding something. Additionally, what you want to do is you want to perform sort of opposite operations. Okay, if your problem involves multiplication, check your work by dividing. If you're adding, subtract it. Okay, if you're going to take a square root, square it. So manipulate all of these things because this is what you have to do to truly know what's going to happen in the problem. All right. Now, we've said that time is a key factor, and I hate to say this, but the better you know something, the faster the information comes out. So you've got to get to the point where you can say what you need to in a very efficient amount of time. And one way to do this is time drills, okay? Practice working your problems quickly and time yourself. Exchange problems with a friend, okay? Time each other. This also makes a difference, and this is what happens in study groups too, all right? Analyze the problem before you start calculating. Okay, so set it up before you begin to solve it. When it's worth a lot of points, read it twice, slowly. The smallest word changes in a science or math problem can make the biggest differences in the answers. And so one of the biggest issues students have is they panic and they just glaze over something and think, oh, I've got this, but they're not analyzing it carefully. When you do, you can very often see ways to take shortcuts. Okay, in addition to making sure that you really know what they're after, because if you don't, you're not going to get the points. Okay, pictures are wonderful things. Draw a picture or diagram if you're stuck. Sometimes visual representations help to unclog your mind. Estimating is also a good thing. It's a nice way to double check your work. This helps you notice if something is going awry, and then you can fix your error as you're going. Check your work systematically. Okay, did I read the problem correctly? Did I use the right formula? Is all of my arithmetic correct? Did I answer this in the right form? Don't rush. Okay, so when you're rushing to finish the test, it's easier to choose the wrong answer. And I know we're sort of contradicting, but remember, it's all about time management. Review your formulas, especially right before the exam. Okay, review them that you'll use. This is when you can do the mind dump. Okay, write them on the margin of the test or the back of the test paper. So try to get everything in there that you need to remember. And then once you actually get the test in front of you, just dump it all on the paper so then you don't have to, keep thinking back. What was that again? What did I forget? Oh, I forgot this symbol. Okay, so do that mind dump. It's definitely really useful. So let's talk about those science exams. Okay, so read the directions carefully. Okay, so if you're not reading the instructions, you're going to give yourself such a headache. Okay, and that can really mess things up. So make sure you're reading the test instructions carefully. Budget your time. Make sure you can complete the entire test. Do not leave a blank. Okay, if you leave something entirely blank, then they can't do anything or help you out with any partial credit or anything like that. So read the questions carefully, answer those that you're sure of first. Okay, and if there's no penalty for wrong answers, guess, but do that on your second or third round going through the exam. Okay, and try to save time to review your answers before you actually submit your test. This can really make a big difference too. So, budgeting your time, working efficiently, hit the ones that you can do first. Okay, and then the ones that you're kind of sure of, go back and hit those in the second round. And the ones you're not sure of at all, and you're just totally taking a guess out of thin air, keep those for last, but make sure that you don't leave blanks. So what we're going to talk about now are ways to prepare for math exams, but this isn't just applicable to math, okay? Especially the first one. Go to the exam on time, okay? So I can't tell you how stressful it is for everybody when you show up late. And some faculty will give you extra time to complete it, some of them won't. And that, to be perfectly honest with you, is up at the faculty member's discretion. And many times they just won't. So set 6 alarms for yourself. Do whatever you have to do to get to the exam on time. And make sure you've got your calculator, your pencils, or whatever it is that you need. Okay? Once again, writing down the formulas you'll need to remember, reading the instructions, okay? Skimming the exam and doing the questions that you know immediately. Don't forget to pace yourself to make sure you've got everything, okay? Do problems you can do, but eventually take more time. Do that in the second and third round, okay? Then go back and work on the hard problems. To do this, you have to be systematic, find the important information that is in the setup of the problem, break it into smaller parts. Do this part first, this part second, okay? Don't panic, all right? Just breathe. It's just an exam, okay? It's not Yes, exams are stressful. Okay, I get that, but it's just a test. Okay, there's way more things in life to be stressing about, and this is not one of them. Just do your best. And last but not least, please don't write a novel. Okay, it's just a waste of effort. Write what you need to write to put the information down that they're asking for. More is not better. We know that trick. Don't forget, we were alive and doing this stuff long before you all were born. We know that trick. Don't do it. A lot of times it doesn't even get read, or faculty get put in a grumpy mood because they have to read through something. And you don't want faculty in a grumpy mood. You want them happy. You want them to see that you know the information, so you don't have to write everything. Worst case scenario, if you have no idea where to start, reread the question. Okay? Check to see if there are any other problems that are similar. Reread the formulas. This is one of my favorite suggestions, and I think it's super important, is to list the information that is known. Okay? Then list what you need to find, and then think about what you have to do to get to the answer. All right? Don't forget to allow time to check your problems, and please look out for stupid errors. I mean, everybody makes them, unfortunately, especially if your brain is, a little bit panicked. But, give yourself time to go back and get those, dumb errors so you don't end up losing points on the whole problem, because then everybody just gets sad. Okay, so as you're taking the exam, let's talk about what to do. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. Read the directions. Never just assume you know what the directions say. For example, just because it looks like it's true false, what if you're supposed to correct the false? Okay, then you lose half credit, if not all credit right there. Also, check to see if more than one answer can be correct. Check to make sure you're not penalized for guessing. Okay, these are all things that you must consider if you want to do well on the exam. My next suggestion, and I really like this one, is to answer essay questions first. Okay, so this gives you sort of the confidence and momentum to get through the rest of the test. Generally, if you're sure these answers are correct, then you feel good, and then you can go in and dive into the rest of the exam. Okay, don't spend too much time on one question, and again, don't write a book. They're not going to read it all. Okay, go back to the difficult questions, so save those for last. When you go over the test and you're doing the essays, your subconscious will sort of be working on the other answers, which is actually, as I've said this before. Later, other items on the test, hint, hint, might give you useful or needed information for earlier items. I do this all the time on my exams. So I try to use exams as learning tools, okay, to teach you guys information you need to know. And there's a lot of times I'll put helpful hints to jog your memory later on in a different question, okay? So don't just sit there and stubbornly try to address it. Skip it for now and go back later. Answer all the questions unless you're penalized for wrong answers, which I'm hoping that's never the case. If you're not sure of something, ask your teacher. Okay, don't ask for the answer, obviously, but you have to phrase your question and make sure that your instructor realizes that you have the information, but you're not sure what they're specifically asking for. Okay, don't get intimidated. It's their job to teach you, so ask if you're not sure of something. Try to answer the questions from the instructor's point of view. This is really important. Okay, remember what the instructor emphasized and felt was important as they were going through a lecture. Don't forget to use your margins to help you figure out if the question isn't clear. Sometimes this makes it better, okay? And then if the answer seems ambiguous, start writing, okay? Circle the key words in difficult questions. This forces you to focus on the central point. I like that one too, okay? Express difficult questions in your own words. This is actually a really cool trick. So if you rephrase it, then it can make it clearer to you. But again, don't change the meaning of the question. So you've got to be precise with this. So use this trick carefully. Use all of the time allotted for the test. Do not just blow through it and leave, okay? If you have extra time, cover up your answers and rework the question. So I realize that you want to get out of there, but you also want to make sure you don't make any silly mistakes. And I don't know how many times I've had students just blow through an exam and then they're really bummed about it later, because if they just stayed and read through it, it would have gone much better for them. So let's talk about different types of questions that you'll see on the exam. Okay, so remember that you can potentially have true-false. So the basic idea behind a true-false question is simple. You have a single statement and you have to decide whether it's true. This makes the choice more difficult, okay, because in order to be true, it has to 100% be true. This is where you really want to zero in on those details, okay? A single word choice can make something false. Speaking of, watch for those little words. This turns an otherwise true statement into one that is false, or vice versa. Okay, so researchers have found that statements containing certain words like generally, okay, that certain words such as the following, they're generally false. If it says all, only, always, because, okay, it's not good. Statements containing other words such as the following are generally true. None, generally, usually. Okay, that means there's a hedge in there, and that means that technically then, it's true. If you don't know an answer, always guess unless, again, you get penalized for being wrong. Okay. And true false tests, by the way, the data shows your first hunch is usually correct. So don't change an answer unless you are absolutely sure of it and something later on in the exam jogged your memory. And then don't forget, if any part of the statement is false, the whole statement is false. Okay. Makes a big difference. Another potential test taking question are matching, okay, where you connect items on one list with items on another list. You either use a number or letter identifying the words, okay, to figure out what actually matches. So what I would do is I would choose one of the columns and match as many items as you can with those in the other column. Okay, you can start with either one, doesn't matter, but you've got more success if you start with the column providing the most information first. Okay. Work with only one column at a time. Match each item in that column against everything in the second column until you find the proper one. Okay, and again, a lot of it's in the actual details. Those that have used, cross things off. The other thing too, count, okay? If there might be extras, then that's okay. Just it helps to know ahead of time what you're up against. So count both columns really quickly and say, oh, okay, so every one of these is going to match every one of those. Or, oh, look, I have two extra. I should remember that as I'm going through, okay? This all makes a difference in how you approach your questions. So let's talk multiple choice. This tends to be one of the more favorite forms, and especially in science when you have a class with a lot of students. So my suggestion to you, anticipate the answer before you look at the choices. Okay, physically cover the answers with if you have a Scantron sheet, and see if you can answer the question first. Read over all of your options. Don't just fly through it and say, oh, I bet it's that one. Okay? Process of elimination is your friend. Anything that's not likely to happen, you can just get rid of. Okay? By the way, some examiners give away answers in their tests. By answering one question, you might be able to realize the answer to another one. So again, if you if you end up just sort of skipping it for now, let's say you don't know an answer and then you come back and address it later, that could really work in your favor. Okay, so if you have to guess, let's say everything else kind of went, okay, keep in mind the following tips. Sometimes lengthy or highly specific answers will be the correct one. Not always, just sometimes. Be aware of words, again, like always, never, only, must. These are usually the wrong answers. This means that there's no exceptions, and in science, there's almost always exceptions. These are extreme words and most likely to be in the wrong choice. Okay? Answer all the questions in order without skipping or jumping around. Okay, identify doubtful answers by marking in the margin and recheck as time permits. Again, everybody's going to have their own strategy. Do your essay first, then you do your multiple choice. Some say skip questions around. I kind of like that, to be honest. But then, others, at least if you guess and you put something down and then you mark it to come back to it, then you won't have any blanks by mistake. Okay, so you just have to kind of decide what actually works best for you. So hopefully this will be helpful. So as you're going through multiple choice, don't linger too long. Okay, mark your best guess and move on. If you have time, go back later. Reread all your questions containing negative words like not or least. Okay, be alert for these, even double or triple negatives within a sentence. Make sure you really understand the question, and if you don't, ask. Okay? Check for qualifiers like almost, some to none, or always, usually, seldom, never, best to worst, smallest, largest. Okay, the test for truth by substituting other members of the series. If your submission makes a better statement, the question is false. If your substitution does not make a better statement, the question is true. Okay? Watch for modifying or limiting phrases in the true-false questions in particular. Oh, I guess we switched to true-false. My apologies. I meant to put a smaller header in there. Okay? Be alert for multiple ideas or concepts within the true-false statements. Watch for grammatical inconsistencies. Okay, a choice is almost always wrong if the grammar doesn't make sense, or the instructor wasn't paying attention. It doesn't. Remember, these are not hard and fast rules. These are just suggestions. Okay. Be cautious about changing your answer from true, false, or multiple choice. They say the first one is most likely to be correct. Okay? And then be similar between the true, false, and multiple choice. Ultimately, you all have to find what works for you. I'm just trying to offer helpful suggestions in case things are not working right now, and I want you guys to do the best possible. And remember, these are not rules for everything, okay? They're not hard and fast rules, but they're just suggestions. So do what works best for you. But if things are not working now, then definitely give some of these a try because that's what the whole purpose is. So let's talk about those essay questions, okay? I'm not going to lie, I love essay questions for exams. And the reason is because this is where I get to see you guys really put your ideas together and I figure out what you really do and don't know. Okay, so make sure you're ready for the test, both mentally and physically. So we're going to talk about later in the semester how important sleep is. Do not stay up all night before the exam. Research has shown, as we will discuss, that sleep deprivation makes it almost impossible to recall things properly. Okay? So prepare for your exam mentally and physically. Listen carefully to the final of the instructions. How much time do you have? Do all the questions count equally? We've said this before. Are there any corrections, changes, or additions to the test? I can't tell you how many exams where I've caught a mistake and I've had to go back and say, okay, guys, wait, don't do this. Put this was meant to be here. Don't just panic, okay? Your instructor should tell you if there's any changes and pay attention to those. Begin the test immediately. Do not fall asleep. I've seen this on exams and it just gives me stress. Okay, so this is where going and getting a proper sleep the night before is key. Again, don't spend too much time answering one question before you answer the others. Read your essays carefully. Pay special attention to those key words. If you don't understand something, ask. That's your teacher's job. The other thing you can do is rephrase the question into a central idea for your essay answer. Okay? Think before you write. Don't just start spilling stuff out because then teachers and instructors have to go through and sort through it all to find what they're looking for. Jot down the important information, write out a brief outline, okay, and then dive into the question. Organize as best as you can. Have a strong topic sentence for each paragraph. We're still looking for that. We may not count off for it, but it just gives us headaches. Write concisely. Don't use abbreviations or non-standard language. I'm not going to guess, okay? Emphasize areas that you are most sure of. Keep your test paper neat with reasonable margins. Guys, I can't even tell you how important neatness is. If I can't read it, I'm not giving you credit for it. Okay, I'll just mark something off because I can't read it and that's it. So a lot of instructors will do that. If they can't read something, forget it. Okay, because it's not like we can go back and ask you later. Revise and proofread as carefully as time will permit. Okay, so get your answers out there. Do the best you can to address all the points of the question. Sometimes check marks as you go through. There's address this, I address that. Oh, forgot that one. Okay, that lets you know what you did and did not address and what you still need to do. Okay, so just a last few suggestions. It's important to understand what the teacher's asking for in an essay question. Don't just sit there and answer this by writing everything and anything you know about the topic as fast as you can. That's such a bad idea. Okay, we are looking for particular information, bits of information. So you've got to organize this. You've got to think about it. You've got to go through it and figure, okay, so what are they asking and how do I address this? The first step is to read the question several times. As you read, pay special attention to those key words. To understand and respond to the key words is necessary. Okay? Read the question several times if you have to. And ask. If you don't know, ask. Okay? Rephrase the question into a statement. This can serve as a thesis statement for your essay. Okay? Often works well to keep the key words in your thesis statement. Hint, hint. Outline the main points that you plan to cover in your answer. Time will not allow you to include everything, so get those big points in there. Okay? Write your essay. Opening sentence should be your thesis statement, which is potentially a reworded question. Follow this with background info, which might be necessary to complete the understanding of your answer. Now again, everybody has different test-taking strategies, and these are just some suggestions. But the key is to just relax, to take a breath, and to address things as they come up. It's going to be fine. Okay? It's just an exam. Don't let it consume you. Yes, you want to do well. You know, we all want you to do well. That's why we're going through this. But, you have to relax and just do your best. So homework next week. What I want you all to do is list out your test-taking strategies for me. I want you to tell me, what have you been using? Give me at least 3. and then tell me if they are or not working for you, okay? And then how you can improve. And so whether it's reading the questions more carefully, or if it's coming up with an outline, or if it's doing a mind dump, okay? Whatever you're actually using, I'd like to know, and then, we can talk about it next week once you guys turn those things in. So I wish you a wonderful week. I will be holding office hours again on Monday the majority of the day. Most of the time I'm there from like 10 a.m. to 4. If you send me an email, I can make sure that I'm definitely there during that time. And if I'm not, I'll probably be back. Although this Monday, I do have to leave to probably and from noon to 3. But I'll be there from 10 to 12 and then 3 to 4. You guys can always come see me. Send me an email if not. And if I'm not there, I'll probably just be down the hall in 3130. So after lunch is over, I'll be in 3130 on Monday of this week. If you need me, come find me. Hope things are going well. I'll talk to you soon.